Hello and welcome to Introduction to Kickboxing. I'm your instructor, Jim Graden. So if you're watching this video, you probably have either done kickboxing in the past and want to get better at it, or something brand new to you. It really doesn't matter to me. I'm going to teach it the same way. And realize, fitness kickboxing has only been a popular form of exercise now for probably about the last 20, 30 years. In fact, I was someone who considered a pioneer in bringing fitness into martial arts schools and utilizing kickboxing as a form of exercise. And it's a fabulous one, and if you're utilizing it for exercise, you've really picked the right activity. Very few things you're going to get more out of than a good kickboxing class. But if you're also a competitor or a martial artist that just wants to improve their skills, you've also come to the right place, because I teach, whether it's someone who's just looking for fitness or someone who's actually looking to take it to the ring, at least for the basics, I'm going to teach the same way. Now, for those of you in the fitness, you're probably thinking, well, why do I need to work on things that someone would use in the ring if I'm just looking for fitness? Well, proper execution of technique is not only doing it right, but also it will engage more of your body. One thing we're going to talk about in this particular lesson is learning how, first of all, to establish a good fighting stance or defensive posture, or even a stance you can defend yourself in. And that doesn't matter whether you're just doing it for fitness, or you're doing it for self-defense, or you're doing it for actual fighting. You need to have a good foundation, balance that you can depend on to do your techniques out of. Second is learning to utilize the entire body when executing techniques. Now, when it comes to self-defense or it comes to fighting, of course, that means we're going to be hitting harder. But for those of you who are looking at it predominantly for just for fitness, the more you engage your body, the more of a workout you're going to get. Most people, when they punch, they just punch with their arms. They kick, they just kick with their leg. Well, to do it properly, you should be engaging your whole body as you do the technique. You shouldn't just be punching with your arm or leg. So let's go ahead and get started. In this particular lesson, we're going to talk about that foundation, and we're actually going to talk about the body movement when you do your strikes, especially your punches. So you notice I have this ruler. I'm probably wondering why. So we're going to start off with developing that fighting stance. And what I want you to do is, you can use a ruler. You can grab, some people, if you're done martial arts before, you can right about anything that's straight, you're going to put down on the ground. And you're going to put it down on the ground so you have something to utilize to give width in your balance. So when I do my fighting stance, I want to have, starting off, I want to stand up straight and have one shoulder width in my balance. In other words, my feet are not together. I'm not way out here. I've got one foot in line with my left shoulder and one foot in line with my right shoulder. And then I look down to my ruler, or whatever you're utilizing as your, we call that the center line, and I make sure that's cutting me right in half. So from here, we want to take what we call a comfortable step forward. In other words, I'm not way out here and I'm not just short. I'm just, what's a comfortable step for you? So with that step, let's have both our feet still going straight forward, and let's talk about each foot. So if you notice, I still have width. In other words, I still have the one foot in line with the left shoulder. I have the other one in line with the right shoulder. So my power, especially in my punches, is basically at the end of my toe. So if I have my front foot pointed way over that direction and I try to punch this direction, it takes a lot of the strength away from the punch. What I want to do is I want to take my toe and aim it at my opponent's center line. And since we're usually about a step away or half a step away from the heavy bag or opponent, that's kind of how we visualize. So in other words, my foot's in line with my left shoulder, but it's slightly turned in. And then my back foot, I want to have a balance that I can defend against strikes and punches that come at me by keeping and eliminating my targets by keeping my body to the side. It also will help create power off this backside as well. But at the same time, I also want to be able to, again, square up with my opponent. So we have kind of a happy medium here, where you're going to have a tendency to want to turn a lot and try to put those feet in line and then sometimes you're going to end up squaring up and getting those feet too wide. You want to make sure that front foot is just missing that center line and pointing right towards your opponent's center line, and your back foot is off of what I call a 45-degree angle. And if you notice, my left toe is just missing that ruler, and my back heel is just missing that ruler. In other words, you could have like a small ball be rolled between your legs, you know, tennis ball or ping pong ball, but not a bowling ball, right? So this is real important because my goal is to be able to move and shift my weight in balance. And if I have my feet in line, as soon as I start to turn and shift my weight and rotate, I'm now off balance. It's like trying to defend yourself on a tightrope. So we want to make sure we have a little bit of width, and we've got about one step in depth. Our body's turned is not squared to the opponent, because if you square up, you basically show all your target areas. So we want the body turned to the side, but we don't want it to be so much to the side that our feet end up in line and my foot's no longer pointing at my target. So this is something that you have to focus on. You know, I think I tell people this all the time. Kickboxing or martial arts is not 2 + 2. It's not like, okay, I know it. This is something you're going to have to work on a lot. Every time you train, you should be focusing and trying to develop this fighting stance. Because in time, you really want that fighting stance or defensive posture or whatever, almost like one of your favorite chairs at home. What do I mean by that? You know, everybody has a chair or a couch. As soon as they get them, they sit down, love it, feel rested for the day, totally comfortable. Well, you want to have a balance, especially under duress, that you can step back to and have almost that same feeling of like, I know this balance, I know I can create power of this balance. So it's real important. It's something you need to keep focusing on. Other things, the knees need to be bent slightly. I never lock knee, but I don't need to train way down here. So I always have a slight bend of the knees. My weight should also be evenly distributed. Now we're going to talk about shifting the weight forward and shifting the weight back, but in a fighting stance, it should be 50-50, so we're able to go forward and back and create power with that weight shifting. I also want my feet to have the majority of the weight on the ball of my feet. Try this. Stand up with me here and go up on the ball of your feet. Okay, that's pretty easy, right? Now go up on your heels. Whoa, okay, you'll notice that you have much more balance in the ball of your feet, but not all of it. So what you want to do is you want to be in a fighting stance, and by pulling, see my back heel is going to be slightly off the ground. That transfers about 60-40 of my weight to the ball of my feet. So I'm in a position where I can move, and all fighters want to be able to move, as opposed to on my heels, where usually a fighter is about to be knocked out if his weight is heels. So let's review. Good fighting stance. Again, shoulder width, step forward, one good step, comfortable step. Front foot stays in line with that left shoulder with that toe pointing at the target. Back heel is off the ground with the other foot going at a 45-degree angle. In other words, not this way, it's not this way, a 45-degree angle. Our knees are bent and soft. In other words, I'm soft in the knees, but I'm not way down here, but I'm definitely not lock leg. My weight is evenly distributed between my left and right foot, and my weight is about 60% on the ball of my feet. And we're doing this by transferring that weight by bringing that back heel off the ground. And it doesn't matter which foot I have forward, it's the same. All right, so this is a good fighting stance. Now let's talk about hand positioning. Okay, so again, in theory, somebody's trying to hit back, right? So we want to have good hand position. We want to have our hands up. It also, again, for those of you who are thinking just fitness, well, I don't have to worry about that because no one's trying to hit me. Well, if you want a better exercise, focus on keeping your hands up. You'd be so surprised how tired and how fatigued your shoulders will get in the short term, and then how strong and what endurance you will have in them in the long term. Because there's a huge difference, and I always like to keep my hands basically cheek level here. Hands, cheek, and on my right elbow, the rear elbow, so we're gonna work both sides, stays in tight, and the hand's right by my cheek. I won't have it in front of me, I don't want to create blind spots. And then my other hand is right to the left, right in line with that left cheekbone. And again, I can be here like the old Mike Tyson, or I can be out here a little bit. Doesn't really matter, at least if you're doing fitness. In martial arts, I'll teach you later on why it does matter. But in the short term, the main thing is keep your hands up. Huge difference between this and this. Just that little, why? Because I can rest here. This is resting. And I'm resting my shoulders and so forth, but I'm also exposing myself to getting hit. I want my hands here. So this hand, again, not right in front of my face, just to the right of the center line, just to the left of the center line, basically in line with my ear, and here right by the cheekbones. Okay, let's now talk about how to create power with our body. And we're gonna do that without doing any strikes. You know, I came originally, when I did martial arts, from a traditional martial arts background. And in that, you had so many different balances. You had straddle stance, you had forward balance, you had back balance, you had a cat stance, all these balances that really had nothing to do with defending yourself. In my system, especially the system of kickboxing, I'm only going to give you 3 positions. 3 positions. One we've already worked on, a good fighting stance. You should definitely focus on that. It's the most important thing I can teach you. But number 2 is forward position. And again, we're not going to worry about this right now. We're going to put our hands on our hips and focus our attention from our hips down. This is really where you learn to fight, learn to create power. It's your legs and your hips. And rotation of the shoulder, yes, but the most important is legs and hips. Where most people just punch from here, you need to learn to punch from here. So our forward position is where we go from that 50-50 balance we talked about earlier to shifting my weight. My weight goes forward, and I go from that 50-50 to a 70-30. In other words, 70% of my weight is transferred to that forward leg. And we like to utilize the term sitting down on a punch. And that's basically feeling the heel and the weight driving in. Just like if you were going to sit in a chair, you just collapse that knee and you feel the weight on the heel. You plant it as you throw this punch, planting the punch. And at the same time as we do this, we turn our heel, we turn our hip, and we turn our shoulder. So we're getting rotation as we shift our weight forward in the punch. And that rotation also creates a lot of power, especially the hip rotation. Now, I tell my students this all the time. Focus on rotating the heel more than shifting the weight or even turning the hips. Why? Because if I put that heel down and I punch like most people do and they don't turn that back heel, you cannot. Look at that heel. My heel stays down. Try it. Put your heel down and try to rotate your hip through. You have a side center line. We talked about the forward center line. You have a side center line where your goal is to get that hip through that side center line, right? Well, if I have my heel and keep it there, it's not going anywhere. So now I've pretty much eliminated the rotation and the drive of the legs into my punch. You've weakened the punch. You want a strong punch. And I'll tell you what's interesting. If you like watching football or even baseball, you watch a pitcher or a quarterback, especially a quarterback, they throw the ball, they will end up in the exact same position I'm talking about. The weight will have transferred forward. You'll see their hips have turned. You'll see their heel rotated. The difference is they have the feedback of the ball. You know, the ball doesn't go far. He'll automatically adjust to make it go farther without even knowledge of doing so. Much harder to throw a punch. When you throw a punch, you don't get nearly as much feedback. You have to concentrate on doing this. Otherwise, I'll be honest with you, you won't get it down. If you don't focus on this a lot, and I'm talking like every time you train, it's easy to go away. It's easy to get satisfied with just the impact of the strike instead of making sure that we're doing it properly. So this is the forward position. So try this a few times and don't think in terms of rotation as much as forward, that we're driving forward. Because if I think rotation, I'll have a tendency to do this with my back foot. I call it the bowling mistake. Where people, you ever bowled before? Oh, right, back foot over. Well, if you over-rotate, you'll have a tendency to do that. That foot will naturally slide over, which is not good. You want to have your feet planted when you throw your strike. So you want to make sure that the weight is transferring forward as I sit down. Again, if you look from the side, you'll see the weight sit, you'll see the heel, the hip, the shoulder. And we can put that into, there's many things we actually do in that position. Do the straight right hand, We do elbows here, we can slip here, we can weave here. That position, that forward position, is a big aspect, a major aspect of our training. But in the kickboxing, in the boxing part of it, you're gonna be doing a cross out of that position, and you're gonna be doing an uppercut out of that position. Okay, so now let's focus on coming back. And this is real important to understand. When I throw a punch or a kick, my weight shifts forward, as I said before, and I throw that right hand. Well, if I'm in this position, I have my weight forward. I have to come back to 50-50 to continue to engage. My trainer, you might want to look him up, Joe Lewis, Lewis. No, I'm not that old, not the boxer. But he was one, along with Bruce Lee, trained with Bruce Lee for 3 years, really talked about mixing up the arts. And he really brought in boxing into the martial arts, and then basically is considered the creator of kickboxing. And one thing he taught me, I'm considered his top protege, when you throw a punch, a right hand, or that uppercut, and your weight shifts forward, you have to come back. So why not come back with the hook or with any other type of strike? So we want to have a forward position where that weight shifts forward 70%, but we also want to come back and have that weight transference. Now I go to 60% of the weight now my back leg, and I feel that weight transfers into that heel. So forward 70-30. Weight shifts back, I go back, hip turns, and watch the heel. There it is. Now if you notice, it's not quite as extreme as the rear heel turning. It comes up slightly. I'm also, depending on the strike, if I'm doing a hook, my shoulder comes through. If I'm just slipping, my shoulder stays back. But from here down, it's all the same. So, forward position. Weight shifts forward 70-30. Side position, 60-40. Body turn to the side, hip turn. Now we're trying to take that hip to the straight center line. This same thing. Keep that heel down, hip doesn't come through. Bam, I turn that heel, and I'm allowed, my body allows me to bring that hip to the center line. So when I go forward, the side center line, this hip goes to it, or actually a little through it, only if I turn that heel. As I come back, boom, I can only bring this hip to the center line if, again, I slightly turn that heel. And then we always come back to guard. So this is really important, all right? Something you need to focus on before you even think about learning proper punches. Because when we go into the boxing, we're gonna be combining these elements, this weight shifting, to the jab, the cross, the hook, the uppercut, which was predominantly the techniques I'm gonna show you for kickboxing or just regular boxing as we move into the boxing aspect. So again, quick review. Good fighting stance. Again, if you get a mirror, it'd be great. In front of a mirror, look at yourself, shoulder wide. Step forward, turn that foot slightly in, turn the body to the side. 50-50 weight distribution, hands up by the cheekbones, and just, look at it. The old saying, again, I'm come from the old school, keep that chin down. If you're gonna get hit, you're gonna get hit in the forehead, not in the face. So I'm a big believer in that. Hand positioning is gonna be up around our cheekbones, not down here. An old saying, if your hand's down here, we call it praying position. Okay, if you keep them there, you better pray because you're not protecting yourself. But also, fitness-wise, this will burn your shoulders. And I guarantee you, we do about 5-10 minutes, and you really work on keeping those hands by the cheekbones, you're gonna be dry, oh my goodness. And then over time, of course, you're gonna have strong shoulders. And then we put our hands on our hips, and that's shifting. Bam, weight shifts forward. Sit down on that punch. Weight shifts back. And we bring that heel off the ground. And then we're back to guard 50-50. I say this to my students all the time. You're sitting at the line at the grocery store, right? Waiting there, nothing going on. Practice your kickboxing. Shift forward, shift back to center. Shift forward, shift back to center. Or a good drill is just forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. People will think you're crazy, but what the heck? You're getting better. All right, this is Jim Graden. That's round number 1, or lesson number 1 on learning how to execute proper kickboxing skills. All right, let's move on to number 2.